Hello ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary compatriots. I'm Ray Frickard and welcome back to Superhero Kill Counts. Y'all better buckle up for this one because holy shit is this movie bad. That's right, today we're taking a look at Dark Phoenix, released in 2019 and directed by Simon Kinberg. Now if that name sounds familiar to you, you're probably a huge nerd like me, but if it doesn't, let me clue you in. Simon Kinberg served as either writer, producer, or both on 7 of the previous X-Men films, going as far back as the original trilogy. So he's been in the background this entire time, rising through the ranks and pulling all the strings, and it was all building up to this point because this movie, God bless him, this is his directorial debut, and whew, boy, that's gotta sting. This movie follows Jean Grey on the franchise's second attempt at the Dark Phoenix storyline after the colossal failure that was X-Men: The Last Stand. Hey, wait a minute. Holy shit, he wrote that one too?! Dark Phoenix was released internationally and on home media as X-Men Dark Phoenix, presumably to rake in a few more bucks from brand recognition, because this movie was a critical and commercial failure in every sense of the word. The theater I saw this movie in pulled it about a week after it came out. I was one of the lucky ones who was able to get in early. So while me and 4 or 5 other brave moviegoers sat through this 2-hour torture session, I have to tell you I was laughing literally the whole way through. This movie is so bad that it's funny, but not in the way that The Room is funny. No, more like the way that slowly breaking down and losing all of your faith in humanity causes you to laugh because you're too far gone to cry, you know? Now sometimes I have to stop and ask myself, am I being too harsh on this film? No, and I will show you why as I count up the kills in the final X-Men movie of all time. The final X-Men movie of all time. The movie kicks off with some corny narration from Sophie Turner as we flash back to Jean's childhood in 1975. She's on a car ride with her parents and criticizing their music taste when her mutant powers begin to manifest. First by changing the radio station, okay, seems reasonable, and then by causing this horrific car accident that ends up killing her mother. But you know what, Jean, it's okay, we've all been there.
Sometimes you accidentally kill your family. There's nothing to beat yourself up about.
She's then visited by a not bald, not de-aged Patrick Stewart, Charles Xavier, who informs her of a special school for mutants and blah blah blah, you know the spiel. So we jump ahead nearly 20 years, and good god, this is just getting comical at this point. Age is literally just a number to these people. So it seems that NASA has sent a shuttle up into space, and something seems to have gone wrong. Bear with me now, because this is how the movie actually begins. The President of the United States calls Professor X on his X phone and asks the X-Men to go to space and save these astronauts. I shit you not. Like, they're just sending these school students to space instead of some highly trained individuals who are supposed to be up there. This is giving Fant Four Stick. You know, I can't help but wonder what would happen if there was a basketball game going on at the time they needed the X-Jet. So as the X-Men take to the stars and Scott and Jean show off their incredible lack of chemistry, Kurt just about sums up what I was thinking at this point in the movie when I first saw it.
I think this is not as much fun as I thought it would be.
They managed to get most of the astronauts to safety, but their commander is missing, and they can't go back because the ship is falling apart, and there's a giant space cloud coming right for them, because, as we all know, Marvel loves their giant space clouds. Raven considers this an acceptable loss, but Charles refuses to leave anyone behind, and convinces Jean to hold the ship together while Kurt goes in for the save. They manage to save the last crew member, but Jean gets caught in the blast and seemingly absorbs the, well, whatever it is. They make it back to Earth unscathed and are greeted by their adoring fans. But I can't help but wonder, in this universe, is Blueface considered racist? Charles congratulates his students on their bravery, but Raven's not having it. She rips into Charles for almost getting Jean killed, and gives probably the single worst line delivery in this entire franchise.
And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
That joke was done way better in Deadpool 2, just saying.
Besides, we're X-Men.
No, you're ex-people.
You're exhausting.
Hank gives Jean the old once-over and determines that she's perfectly fine, aside from the fact that she has somehow gotten more powerful. How you scientifically calculate that, I have no idea. And all is well in the X-Mansion once again. Meanwhile, in the most pointless subplot in all of filmmaking, this group of randos is having a dinner party and this lady Margaret, played by Juilliard graduate Jessica Chastain, goes out to check on her dog when she witnesses a literal alien invasion. I'm not kidding, this movie has an alien invasion subplot. Isn't it a bit late to introduce aliens to your universe in the 12th film of your 20-year franchise? I mean, I know the Dark Phoenix storyline is all cosmic and intergalactic or whatever, but it just doesn't work in this specific movie. So poor Margaret, and more remorsefully her little doggo, are killed by these invaders, who can also shapeshift into human form. Upon re-entering the dinner party, she touches this guy's tummy and he falls over dead. Hey, you know what? I've been there. I've eaten Taco Bell before. During a little party of their own, Scott and Storm worry about Jean, while Raven tries to convince Hank to leave the X-Men with her, citing Charles's ever-growing ego, which could have been a very interesting subplot had it been handled a bit better. And it is because of this ego that Charles is away at a gala when Jean starts to go haywire. He uses Cerebro to take a look under the hood, so to speak, and accidentally unlocks some of Jean's repressed memories, namely that she killed her mother, and that her father is still alive. You see, in this version of the story, Jean wasn't born incredibly powerful, and Charles blocked off her mind to keep her tame. No, here, he just blocked off her mind to repress her trauma against her will and make her believe that her father was dead, which is arguably worse, I think? Like, what the fuck, Professor X?
I don't have to explain myself. Least of all to you.
She kicks Charles out of her head, Millie Bobby Brown, you are not, and decides her best course of action is to go and find her father. Aliens! Did you like that? Did you see how jarring that was when I did that? That's what watching this movie feels like. It just cuts to this lame-ass plot point at random intervals. Like, we're semi-invested in Jean's story arc, and then boom, alien exposition dump. This scene explains that the aliens are called the Dabari, and they want the Phoenix Force for reasons.
If we can control that power, we can resurrect our race. Begin again.
I just love scenes that make me feel like I'm sitting in on the writer's room while they try to come up with the first draft. So Jean visits her childhood home and things get a little heated at the family reunion when Jean reads her dad's mind to find that not only does he blame her for his wife's death, but he also voluntarily gave her up to Charles just to get rid of her.
I'm sorry, Jean, but my whole world died that day. And you went with it.
Before things could turn bloody, however, her friends arrive, complete with Charles Xavier, all dripped out. Call that James Turtleneck-avoy? No, that's nothing. They mince words for a bit, but when the police arrive, Jean loses her cool and the action commences. She crushes these 3 police cruisers, and sure, yeah, that impact looks brutal enough to kill. They all try using their powers on her, and I'm not kidding when I say she gives Quicksilver a little push, and after taking a tumble through some bushes, he is out of commission for literally the entire rest of the movie. I guess they couldn't get Evan Peters to stick around for more than 5 minutes of screen time. Eventually, Mystique manages to make some headway, but Jean must have caught wind of how bad that ex-women joke was, and she blasts Raven into some shards of debris before being like, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." At least Mystique and Hank get to share some fateful last words.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
So the team heads back to the mansion to regroup, and after Raven's funeral, Hank lashes out at Charles, believing he's responsible for all of this. And I will say the acting is one of the very few good things this movie has going for it, in most cases. The aliens show up to interrogate Jean's father, and they torture information on her whereabouts out of him. I suppose it's safe to say they killed him shortly afterwards, so I'll add him to the count. With nowhere else to turn, Jean ends up seeking help from Magneto, who has created a mutant refuge on the island of Genosha. When did Eric set up this safe haven? How did Jean know where to find him?
Don't ask stupid questions.
She wants Eric's advice on how to stop hurting people, which sounds like a good idea at first, but remember, this is Eric Lencher we're talking about here. This man goes from living a peaceful heteronormative life to rending souls asunder in the drop of a hat, or the drop of a shiny metal helmet in this case. He is the last person whose advice you want to be listening to, but Jean isn't necessarily known for her good decision making, so I guess we can cut her some slack. They get into an argument when Jean won't tell him whose blood is on her clothes, but they're interrupted before things get too heated. Thank God, we wouldn't want an action sequence in this superhero movie. It's the military coming knocking on Eric's door looking for Jean. He doesn't give her up, but it seems that they've reached a stalemate, which Jean decides to put an end to herself by making a grand entrance and eviscerating one of their helicopters. Jean, stop! You are clearly forgetting the wise words of your buddy Colossus.
What was put us through?
Label everything in the refrigerator!
Do not escalate!
She tries to force the other one to take off, but Eric holds it in place as best he could while doing his best Arnold impression.
Get in the chopper and go!
Just look at these two. God, acting is fun. Eric, understandably, kicks Jean off his island, and she goes off to have a big sulk elsewhere.
Word coming late tonight that Congress is considering temporary mutant internment facilities.
Hold on, what? I promise you, this line and this whole concept comes out of nowhere. It's blink and you'll miss it foreshadowing done for the ending that was completely changed during reshoots. You'll see. Another thing you'll notice about this movie is that it loves using flashbacks to set the tone. You know, just in case you forgot what happened in the last half hour. So yes, an hour into this 2-hour movie, our main character finally interacts with our main villain. And when Jean asks her the basic logical questions that the audience is thinking, her answers are so vague that she may as well be a politician.
How did you find me?
Let's just say I have friends in high places.
Who are you?
The better question is, who are you?
You ask her a question, it glances off. She obfuscates, she dances. She tells Jean that she's the only one who can understand her, or whatever, and sets her off down this dark and twisted path. She's not the only one going down that path, mind you, because Hank hijacks the X-Jet and heads off to see Magneto himself. He tells Eric that Jean killed Raven, and that motivates him to don the helmet once more.
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
So Jessica Chastain takes Jean to this fancy hotel and leads her to the bedroom.
I can't tell you what I'm thinking right now.
But no, she just turns the room into a planetarium and gives her another big exposition dump about how her planet was destroyed and how Jean is special and they want her to create a new world for them, blah blah blah, who cares? Anyway, the X-Men find out Jean is holed up there, somehow, and they set a course to find her. They all seem to have come to terms with Hank going on a literal murder revenge mission pretty easily. You'd think that'd be something they'd be a little bit more concerned about, but I digress. I guess sometimes you can't hide from the beast inside. So Charles and Eric arrive at their destination with their teams at the same time to confront a Phoenix-driven Jean who is holed up inside. Deja vu. They have a battle of words, as with most of the battles in this movie, and Scott drops the funniest PG-13 F-bomb in the whole series.
If you touch her, I will fucking kill you.
You're doing great, sweetie. Fun fact, did you know Ty Sheridan wore a muscle suit during filming of this movie because he didn't want to work out? I mean, I can't even blame him. Go off, King. So Eric, in classic Eric fashion, kicks off the grand race for Jean's soul. And it is still so funny to see Hank running on all fours. It's like watching Teen Wolf. The fighting culminates in Eric ripping a freaking subway car out of the ground and sealing off the entrance to the building. As if Charles didn't bring a literal teleporter. But again, I digress. Kurt only has like 5 lines in the entire film, so if the writers weren't paying much attention to him, I wouldn't be surprised if Eric forgot about him too. His assassination attempt fails, because of course it does, and Jean rips that helmet from his head. It's all very symbolic, representing the meta-narrative of female superheroes who have always been suppressed in media, finally rising up against the male aggressors and lording over them the same power that they once wielded themselves. Either that or it's completely arbitrary bullshit. It's Professor X's turn up to bat to try and reason with the cosmically enhanced 20-something, and even he's thrown off by this new lady hanging around Jean. And in a scene that is incredibly hard to watch, and not for the reasons they intended, Jean telekinetically forces Charles to walk up a flight of stairs. I know it's meant to be dark, and looking at it in-universe I can see what they were going for, but listen, I can't be the only one who feels that non-disabled actor James McAvoy pretending to be a disabled person being forced to walk is at the very least in poor taste. Is it just me? Other people online seem to really enjoy this scene, so maybe it's just me. Once he's up there, she levitates him in the air, but instead of immediately disintegrating him like last time, she peers into his mind and sees that Charles wasn't manipulating her all along. I mean, yeah, he put up walls to block out your trauma, which is morally dubious in itself, and he told you your father was dead when he wasn't, and also remember that time he asked you to hold a spaceship together and you ended up absorbing a cosmic power source? Yeah, that was like 3 days ago. No, but Charles is definitely not the bad guy, trust us. So Jean's good again. Phew, that was a rough 20 minutes. And she decides the smart thing to do is give this all-powerful Phoenix Force to this alien lady she just met, because, well, I don't really know why. Not to worry though, because Cyclops blasts the dastardly duo apart before they could complete the transfer. And do you see what I mean when I say this movie is unintentionally hilarious?
You kill us all.
A special ops group called the Mutant Containment Unit, or the MCU if you will, arrives and begins neutralizing all the mutants in the area. There's some metaphor here about the X-Men joining the MCU being dead on arrival, but I'm too tired to think of it. This movie makes me tired. So the mutants are fitted with those power dampening collars from Deadpool 2, and if you need any more proof that the writers don't know what they're doing, they put shackles around Charles Xavier's feet. And here we are, the final act of the movie, thank God. So about that reshot ending. According to James McAvoy, the movie originally was going to end with a big space battle that would end up taking the mutants and the aliens to the UN, and it was a whole big thing. But it had to be changed last minute because it too heavily resembled another superhero blockbuster that came out around the same time. They didn't name said movie, but given that Ty Sheridan seemingly confirmed that the Dabari were originally going to be Skrulls, we can place a safe bet that it was Captain Marvel. And so, as the mighty hand of Fox demanded it, this movie, which has to this point been an attempt at telling the story of an intergalactic war for a young girl's soul, has its final battle on a train. Hey, you know, if we're ranking the X-Men movies by how big a role trains play in them, then this movie takes the cake. But we're not doing that. We're never going to be doing that. On their way to the aforementioned mutant internment camp, Charles delivers a rousing speech of heroism. Well, more of a half-hearted apology, and he flips Hank and Eric back to the side of good. Man, it really doesn't take much to change someone's allegiance in this universe. And perfect timing for that too, because the Dabari picked this exact moment to attack the train and spring Jean. In case you haven't noticed, there has been an uncharacteristically low number of kills so far in this movie. This scene is about to make up for that tenfold. Let's do this. The fight begins, and immediately we get one Dabari getting his brains blown out by MCU agents. But they get their comeuppance when that dude's alien buddy blows their helicopter out of the sky. As they begin to enter the train, one alien just sorta stands there and lets them gun him down. Okay. And another one gets blasted in tow. The big guns are taken out, however, when an agent gets thrown through it at full force. The agents then release the mutants for help, even though they seem to be winning, and the powers come out to play. Storm electrocutes what looks to be 15 Dabari on top of the train. Do you know what happens to an alien when it's struck by lightning? Magneto impales 2 of them with metal shards, and his buddy slashes another one off the train, but she's not far behind him. Evidently, her name was Selene. Cyclops blasts an alien away, as Beast and Storm double-team another one. Honestly, it's kinda like swatting flies at this point. One of the Dabari kills this unnamed MCU agent, and that triggers a fucking rage mode in Nightcrawler for some reason. As one dude gets thrown from the train, my guy kills 4 aliens in the most brutal ways he could possibly think of. Slashing throats, snapping necks, call him Hurt Wagner. Magneto's other buddy ends up biting the dust in the process. Google tells me his name was Ariki. Then Nightcrawler fucking teleports another Dabari in front of the fucking train. Look at the pure ruthless joy on his face. He is relishing in this bloodshed. Meanwhile, as Cyclops and Professor X tend to Jean, he blasts another 2 aliens for good measure. Magneto holds down the fort himself by impaling another 3 Dabari. Honestly, I think all these guys should be keeping score, kinda like Legolas and Gimli.
I'm on 17!
He then crushes a train car full of 4 Dabari, plus one that actually gets a name. Fun fact, Jones's actor, Otto Asando, was also in a Marvel audio drama podcast called Wolverine the Long Night. Don't say I don't give credit where it's due. An agent guns down 3 more Dabari as the 4th goes on a suicide mission to avenge his fallen comrades. It's at this point the Dabari leader finally enters the fray. I guess she's just now realizing how inept her army really is. And she runs the gauntlet through Storm and Nightcrawler, but she ends up getting cut off by Magneto.
I have no desire to fight you.
Wouldn't want to fight me neither.
And even she realizes how wishy-washy Eric is with his moral compass.
You wanted her dead.
I had a change of heart.
My guy, you have a change of heart like every other week. At some point, you might want to get checked for an arrhythmia. He blasts her with a wall of guns, but to no avail. It's like she's made of Chess stainless steel or something. Boo! In the holding car, Charles and Jean have a heart-to-heart, brain-to-brain, as Cyclops fends off another 3 creatures. But his efforts are in vain when our extraterrestrial villainess plays Eric like a pinball machine and breaks up this beautiful bonding moment. Jean breaks free from her shackles and finally rises like the phoenix she is to protect her mutant family. And Eric. She causes the train to take flight, and yeah, I'm starting to see the Captain Marvel similarities now. The only difference is that Captain Marvel's good, and you can fight me on that. Once grounded, she disintegrates 6 more Dabari grunts in true Phoenix fashion. So, Alien Lady does a silly run and grabs Jean by the throat.
I can't tell you what.
But oh no, the power that she so desperately sought after is too much for her. It's also too much for Scott, who starts disintegrating in the mere presence of the Phoenix Force. And we've all seen what happens when Simon Kinberg decides to disintegrate Scott. So Jean takes this little party back to where it started. To outer space we go. And that is where we'll get the central theme of the movie hammered over your head with the cheesiest dialogue you've ever heard in your life.
Your emotions make you weak.
You're wrong. My emotions make me strong.
And then Vuk dies. Yeah, her name was Vuk. And do you know why I withheld that information from you? Because Jessica Chastain didn't even know the name of her character until she saw the movie.
My situation, I think, a studio was bought. at a certain point. I didn't even know what my character's name was until I saw the film.
Now do you see what a shit show this is? Then Jean becomes a big bird and explodes. This movie really wants you to think that she's dead. Hell, they even renamed the school in her honor. But anyone who has seen Days of Future Past knows that that's not the case, because she is very much alive and well in the alternate timeline, which is this timeline! But I mean, how would I ever expect Simon Kinberg to know that? He only wrote the screenplay for that movie!
Son of a bitch!
The film ends with more cheesy narration from Jean and the reminder that Quicksilver was in this movie at one point. Our final scene shows Charles Xavier sitting at a diner when an old friend comes up to him to share in a homoerotic game of chess. And that is how I think all movies should end. In total, I counted 77 kills in Dark Phoenix, mostly anchored by that final train battle keeping things on track. The Platinum Batarang for coolest kill goes to that one Dabari the Nightcrawler teleports in front of the train, if only for that joyously evil face Kurt does. Like father, like son, I guess. The Rusty Shield for lamest kill goes to Margaret, because it was completely off screen and it opened the door to that pointless alien subplot that took over the latter half of the movie. So that's Dark Phoenix, a lackluster finale to one of the longest running, most influential superhero film franchises of all time. It was an enormous box office bomb, the first in the franchise and for good reason. It is ugly, boring, and chock full of inconsistencies. Didn't she go Phoenix in the last one too? What was that about? I am in physical pain after that watch through. I have now seen this movie 3 times in my life, and that is 6 hours I'll never get back. Luckily, I won't have to watch it again until I edit this. So, that's it. We finished the X-Men movies. Yep, that's all of them. There are no more films in the X-Men franchise to cover.
That thing will kill you!
He's right, it's magic. So am I.
Okay, fine, I'll do New Mutants. Jeez, get off my back! But until that time comes, see you then, super friends.